talk today?
We ready?
Yeah, already. Okay. Hey guys, it's Trina B with Girl Let's Talk Atlanta. Today's edition of the Pop-Up Talk is in historic Warport Park. We have the lovely ladies
Dr.
here.
Fuller here.
Hello, I'm Musu.
Hey, I'm Kathy.
Hey, it's Mom Kenzie here.
All right, y'all. So we're gonna get into some trendy topics. Okay. So
Okay, yes, ma'am.
this
We ready.
week has been kind of crazy. So first, we're gonna talk about Chad Boswick.
Oh, yes.
So how do you guys feel about that? Like the impact?
I mean, but it's also liberating too, because this man is a real live superhero. Like, he had a chronic disease that was unfortunately was not curable, and he gave us hella movement and awesome work all while he was sick. And that is a superhero. He is definitely a role model for our young black women and our young black men to see that you can be great no matter what.
I think one of the greatest lessons that have come out of this is how important it is to have a strong circle around us. Everyone's been talking about how he was able to pretty much, fight this in front of us, but we didn't know. We just didn't win. And the people around him were willing to maintain confidentiality for him.
Yeah.
And so,
that
that just goes to show that when you have the right people around you, even in the roughest and darkest of times, you can still thrive, and you can still maintain a modicum of privacy and confidentiality. And so I think that was an outstanding lesson in terms of how we deal with other people and how we treat others.
That's a word right there.
Absolutely.
That's a word.
And
You go ahead. You go first.
And I also love how he also contributed to other kids that suffered from the same disease. He was there inspiring them. And in other ways, I think they inspired him also and kept him pushing. And one other interesting part of his history that most of us didn't know about is that when he traced his heritage back, he traced it back to Sierra Leone, which is where I'm from, but it's a very small country, and he's actually from the Limba tribe.
Oh.
So that's an interesting part also.
I did not know that.
I didn't know that either.
I think what I took away from it was I'm glad of the conversation, not only about his legacy, but colon cancer. I don't think the African American community realizes how much colon cancer impacts, especially males. So 25% of African American males die from colon cancer before the age of 50. And it's so important to go to your primary care physician, and if it runs in your family, you need to be tested before the age of 50. And so you need to be tested. I mean, I think was diagnosed when he was like 38 because he passed away when he was like 43, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're in your late 30s and it runs in your family, get tested before the age of 45. And so that, I'm glad that now more people are interested in finding out about colon cancer because it definitely runs in the black community, and it definitely has killed a lot of African American males. So I'm glad that's in the conversation, and more black males are stating that they want to go and get tested and make sure that they don't have a genetic marker for it, which is important.
Right. My first reaction was it was a setup. I think everything is a setup. I don't know. I just have this way of just thinking like, how is this possible? Because this guy has really touched our hearts through his movies, and his personality, and the way that he's involved in certain areas as well. So it's like, how is this possible? Like, what they do to him? He was our Black Panther.
Right.
So that's kind of how I felt about it. But I was devastated, and continue to pray for his family, and definitely, like Dr. Tanya said, colon cancer, getting tested and getting screened for different causes, different illnesses can definitely help us be more aware of how our health is doing, especially when we get older.
I also feel like
two, it also teaches you that you never know what someone's going through.
Right.
You never know what they're secretly going through, and that's why I always say be kind to others. You don't have to be a BFF, but just be kind to others.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Right, right.
Okay. All right. So the next thing that I want to talk about. So did you guys see anything about the missing children here
Oh
that were
yes.
found? What were your thoughts about that? And I want to start with Miss Kathy first.
Um, First and foremost, I was, extremely happy that the the kids were found. That is of the utmost importance, and I would like to see more of those types of operations being, carried out by law enforcement across the nation. Um, but beyond that, I want people to understand that if we had laws in our country that protected children the way that they need to be protected, we wouldn't have to have all of these different stings to go and rescue kids. Because when you look at the people that were arrested in those stings, a lot of them already had a criminal history dealing with sexual abuse. And so the question has to be asked, well, why are they, out roaming free and able to reoffend? So along with that, we also need to have a conversation about buyers, because if there was no demand for these children, then this would not be an issue either. And so with that, we need to start making sure that we're enacting laws where the buyers are punished just as harshly as the
Absolutely.
traffickers. So
Yep.
we need harsher and mandatory sentencing for the traffickers, and we need equal punishment for the buyers. Because what most people don't realize is when these men get caught up in these things, men and women for that matter, a lot of them serve a minuscule amount of time in jail, if any. Sometimes they're able to plead out, get a misdemeanor, pay a fine, and go on about their business, and then they're free to, offend again. And so we have to make sure that we're really pushing our legislators to adopt legislation that's going to require that we sentence these predators, and also we sentence the buyers as well.
And I also feel like, I guess my concern is the trauma that the kids have to face, the aftermath.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Like, we not only, okay, they are rescued, but we got to make sure that, one, that we get them the resources they need to deal with being
And
in
they
that
don't. A lot of
environment.
times they don't get
Right.
the resources.
So they need to get them those resources of dealing with being kidnapped, being abducted, being trafficked, and helping them deal with that trauma.
Right.
Because it is a lot, because that can create their mindset, and kids are impressionable.
Yes, they are.
So it's just like, that can turn their mindset to something totally different, to where they're no longer a 5-year-old. They're no longer a 10-year-old. They're surpassed that, but not in a good way. So,
Well, the reality of it is, it can really be a lifelong healing process for them. And then they also become susceptible to further abuse and trauma.
right.
And so we have to make sure that we're not just rescuing them and leaving them
Exactly.
wherever, they
Exactly.
belong, but also that they're getting that trauma informed care
Yes.
that they need, and not just for, 6 weeks or,
Exactly.
A year.
6 months.
Yeah.
Like, we need to follow them along their healing journey, because as they get older and they start to experience different things in life, things may trigger them. And so now they may need to go back
Yep.
to counseling, and they may need to start that process all over again, or they may need to pick it up where they left off.
Absolutely.
And so we have to understand that, trauma is not something that we necessarily want to assume there's a quick fix for, because there isn't. And we need to make sure that it is a personal approach to what each one of those kids will need, and that we continue to, provide those services to them along the trajectory of healing for them, however they need it. And so
Absolutely.
individualized services are extremely important. And I think a lot of times they like to try and group the kids together and just put them in, like we're gonna do like
Group therapy.
and that does not necessarily work for everyone. People actually need individualized personal therapy.
Absolutely.
I don't mean to, I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep talking, but I was just, because, I just feel like, it's kind of like when, you love your kids, you have 3 of them, right? You can love your kids, but you can't love them all the same. You have to love them individually according to who they are. So I definitely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, and statistically speaking, I've worked with kids that have, and adults that have sexual trauma as a psychiatrist, and what I've noticed is they don't receive the care that they need. I've had kids that have been sexually abused, they come to me, I see them for 2 sessions, the social worker pulls them out, and she's like, that's all the state will pay for.
Right.
So there is, from my personal experience, I've seen myself that there are so many sessions that they get per kid because the state is only going to pay for so many sessions. And then pedophilia, I don't know if you guys know, but California just passed a law, or they're in the process of passing a law, I should say, where now you can sleep, it will be legal to sleep with minors.
As long as they're within 10 years of age.
Yes, as long as they're within 10 years of age.
And
I think
they're between the ages of 14 and 17.
Yes, exactly.
So if
in
you're
Georgia,
14 and he's 23 and a half, it's okay.
Yep.
If you're 17 and they're 26 and a half,
that
that's
is okay. And I think a lot of states are going to start passing that law because they're getting ready to put pedophilia in the DSM. So what that means for me is if I have an adult male and he's 30 and rapes a 3-year-old, by law I have to state he has pedophilia, and then instead of him going to jail for 10 years, I think in most states, I think Georgia, the minimum is like 7 years. I'll have, once I give them that diagnosis, they will only then go to a mental health facility for 2 years. That is it, and they'll be out on the streets again.
And they're changing the laws around the sex offender registry as well. And so there used to be some mandatory requirements in terms of who had to go on the sex offender registry and under what conditions they would have to be placed on the registry. And so they're making a lot of adjustments to those in various states as well. And then depending upon what agency you work with, some of them are now saying that they will not use the sex offender registry in certain background checks. And I think that's absolutely insane, because if you're an agency that has anything to do with working with children, one of the first things you want to know is this person, a sexual offender of any kind? And if you're going to eliminate that particular aspect of the background check, then essentially what you're doing is you're opening the floodgates for sexual predators to now be able to get into position to have opportunity and access to our kids. So I mean, there's an undercurrent that's at play right now, and my main thing for parents is you have to get educated. You need to find out what the red flags are for sexual predators and patterns of abuse and cycles of abuse. Like, you don't have time to play games with this, because the way that the laws are changing in their favor, you have to know how to best protect your child, and that is going to be our only saving grace at this point until we are able to push back on some of this legislation that provides opportunity and access to kids.
And I just want to piggyback on what you're saying. In addition to talking to kids and educating them about what we traditionally see as sexual, what we traditionally label as sexual predators, for me, I'm seeing kids, because I handle sometimes daycare center abuse, it's kid on kid. And parents are teaching their children, okay, this bad adult, this bad woman or man, but I'm seeing it's more children acting out what they see at home. And a lot of times kids, they don't understand that just because it's someone your age or even close to your age, that it's still not right.
Right. So we have to look at what is inappropriate contact between juveniles, because we don't necessarily want to label minors as predators, but they can display some very problematic behavior, and if you don't quickly identify and correct that behavior, then ultimately they can become sexual predators. And most of them, when you see a sexual predator, they started probably around 11, 12 years old. And at that point, either someone did not identify and correct the behavior, or they just had no idea what was going on. And so they were able to continue to experiment and play out some of those urges, and it just continued to grow and grow and grow until it morphed into a full-on predatory nature. And so we have to be very careful in our homes in terms of our children, brothers and sisters, cousins, playmates, schoolmates. Like, the entire conversation needs to be had, and I always say it has to be had early and often. Like, we don't just talk about it at 2, and we're not going to talk about it again until 14. Like, no, you should be having ongoing conversations with your kids and adding age appropriate details to help them understand what is appropriate versus inappropriate contact with both children and adults. And that includes people in your family, in your home, and outside of your home.
And just to reiterate what was said earlier, I do believe that therapy should continue um, throughout the process and time that they want it, and all throughout adulthood, because studies has also shown that people who abuse have been abused themselves. And we need to keep our kids, our brothers, our sisters, and all of us safe.
And just to be transparent, I'm a product of that. And it took me a long time to actually cope and deal with it and be able to talk about it. I tear up a little bit, but I'm okay. Like, I'm not like, it's just because it was someone in the family, and if you talked about it, it was like, don't say nothing because your mom's gonna be upset. You tell her she's gonna spank you. You're not supposed to be doing this. And as a child, when that's done to you, because I was 6 or 7 years old, and as a child, when it's done to you, you don't forget those certain situations. You can remember it as if it happened to you yesterday, and it's been living in me, and that's why I am protective of the way I am with my kids, because I don't allow nobody, like, even though my son is 18, I'm still that mom that's gonna be like, who's in the room? Right. Who's by you? My son is 13, and I'm still like, no, you're not going over somebody's house. You're not spending the night. I don't know who they are. You're not going here. So it's definitely necessary to continue to get the help, because it does affect you.
It does.
And you have to continue to make sure that people are aware of it. Thank you. So I applaud you women for being a vessel to helping those children and people, period, get through it, because we need people like that in the community. And when I was younger, I didn't go and get help. My mom didn't go and say, hey, I didn't tell my parents until I was like 17, and that was because I saw my offender, and every time he would come in the room, I would just leave. I wouldn't be around. I would just leave. I wouldn't say anything to nobody, and it was until it was uncontrollable. And then that's when they asked, and then my mother and my father was furious. And they asked me that I want to prosecute. That's neither here nor there, but it's just, again, like I said, the resources that you two women provide, and even you provide, is definitely necessary, because we need it in the community. So.
And thank you for sharing your story, because I work with survivors, and I know grown women that are 45 years old, and it's very hard for them to speak about it. And it doesn't matter if it happened when you were 5, 6, 7, 8. You remember those moments. So Thank you for sharing, because I know that is not easy whatsoever to share that story and to let people know, your truth. And you're a survivor.
Absolutely. And we got to keep talking about it. And by you sharing your story, you are unconsciously giving other people permission to share their story.
Absolutely.
That's what I tell my son. Somebody touch you? What happened? When he's in school and he's like, anything that happened with teacher, what happened? Because I'm at the school, I need to know. I'm just that person. It's not like, too overly excessive and aggressive, but I'm just still that person. Like, I need to know who's in the room. I need to know who did what, where you're not going.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, I think that we
And I
all
have
need
those
to do that.
conversations
We
with
all
them.
have to do that. we have been made to feel bad because to a certain degree you cannot be too careful. Your children do need the independence to grow and to mature and experience life, but you pretty much need to be a step behind them, understanding what's going on and knowing who's involved. Your kids are now in an age where, I say the most dangerous thing in their possession is this right here.
Yes.
This is the gateway to all kind of danger. And most parents never look at this. They never see who they're engaging with on this. They never see what they're doing on this. They just assume that because they're in the house, that there is an inherent level of safety. But if we looked at all of the cases of kids who have been, approached on social media by sexual predators, be it people that are their own age or people who are older than them pretending to be somebody else. I mean, I publish stories all the time about this, and it's not because we get any pleasure in bringing this to your attention every day, but it's because it's happening every day and it's happening right under your nose. And the reason I know that it's happening is because it happened in my family, it happened in her family, it happened in somebody else's family. So we're not talking about things that we don't know about. We're telling you about things that we have seen and witnessed and have been a part of. And so we have to take the time to figure out what's going on with our kids, and we can't assume that they know better. We can't assume that they would never be, manipulated into doing something, because these predators, trust me, your children are no match for them. They spend their lives figuring out how to get to your kids, and they have mastered it. And you nor I educate our kids and educate ourselves so that we can create those circles of safety.
Also, identifying it. We all need to look out for signs so we can identify it and report it. If we notice something is going wrong and not right, don't be scared to report it.
Absolutely.
You see something, say something.
Yep.
Right.
And that's the thing, we have to break stigmas because there's so many stigmas